Robert's funeral was everything he'd wanted: small, dignified, attended by people who'd actually known him rather than business associates performing obligation. 60 people filled the chapel at Atlanta's oldest black church, the one where we'd gotten married 17 years ago, where we'd celebrated anniversaries and milestones and the quiet joy of finding love late in life. I was 62. Robert had been 77. People whispered about the age gap when we first got together, raised eyebrows at the black woman in her 40s, dating a wealthy white businessman 15 years her senior. But we'd ignored them because what we had was real, built on shared values, genuine affection, and the particular comfort that comes from finding your person after you've stopped looking. The lawyer, Martin Hutchins, approached me during the reception at my house, our house, the Tudor in Buckhead that Robert had bought during his first marriage and that I'd helped transform into something warm instead of merely expensive. "Claudia," Martin said quietly, "we need to schedule the will reading, this week if possible." Already? I was still numb, still processing that Robert was gone. The cancer had taken him faster than the doctors predicted. 6 months from diagnosis to death. 6 months of watching the strongest man I knew diminish into someone who couldn't walk from bedroom to bathroom without assistance. The estate is complex. Multiple properties, business holdings, investments. It's better to move quickly. I agreed to Thursday, 3 days away, told Martin I'd be there. Didn't think to ask who else would attend because Robert's only living relatives were distant cousins he barely knew, and I was his wife. Everything was straightforward. I should have known better. Thursday arrived cold and gray, typical Atlanta February weather that couldn't decide between winter and spring. I dressed carefully. Black suit, pearls Robert had given me for our 10th anniversary, the wedding ring I'd worn for 17 years and would wear until I died. Martin's office was downtown, all marble and mahogany and the particular smell of old money. I arrived 10 minutes early, was shown to a conference room and stopped short. My sister Denise sat at the table. We hadn't spoken in 8 months, not since she'd called me drunk at 2 a.m., demanding a loan I'd refused to give. Before that, maybe a year. Before that, sporadic contact marked more by obligation than affection. Denise was 5 years younger but looked older. Stress and poor choices had carved lines in her face that genetics and good skin care had spared me. She wore a dress that didn't quite fit right, knockoff designer bag clutched in her lap, and an expression I recognized from childhood, resentment mixed with determination. "Denise," I said carefully, "what are you doing here? I'm family. I have a right to be at Robert's will reading. You met Robert maybe 6 times in 17 years. He was my brother-in-law, and I'm your only living relative. Of course I'm here." Martin entered before I could respond, carrying leather portfolio and expression of professional neutrality. Behind him came 2 other people I didn't recognize, a man and woman, both 40-ish, both dressed in business attire. "Mrs. Bennett," Martin said, "this is Charles Morrison and Jennifer Tang. They're representing your sister." "Representing her for what?" Denise spoke before her lawyers could. "I'm contesting the will, Claudia. Robert's will. I filed papers with the probate court." The room tilted. I sat down hard in the nearest chair. "You're doing what?" "Contesting. Robert was elderly, possibly senile. You manipulated him. And as your only living family, I have standing to challenge how the estate is distributed." "Robert wasn't senile. He was lucid until the day he died. And you have no standing because you're not his family. I am. I'm his wife." Jennifer Tang, the female attorney, pulled out documents. "Mrs. Bennett, our forensic evaluation suggests Robert Bennett showed signs of diminished capacity in his final months. The will was executed during a period when he may have been unduly influenced." "That's a lie. Robert worked until 6 weeks before he died, conducted business meetings, made investment decisions, while heavily medicated," Charles Morrison interrupted. "Pain medication that can cause confusion, impaired judgment." Martin cleared his throat. "If we could proceed with reading the will, then discuss the contestation?" He read it aloud. Robert's clear, legally sound will, leaving everything to me. The house, the investment portfolio, the business interests, the properties in Savannah and Hilton Head. Everything. $12 million worth of everything. Denise's face hardened with each item listed. When Martin finished, she stood. "That's exactly the problem. Robert left nothing to his wife's family. Nothing to me, his sister-in-law who'd known Claudia her whole life. Nothing acknowledging that Claudia has no children, meaning when she dies, all this wealth leaves our family completely." "It's not your wealth," I said. "It's mine. Robert earned it, Robert left it to me, and it has nothing to do with you." "Doesn't it?" Denise's voice rose. "You married an old white man for his money. Everyone knows it. You were 45, he was 60. We were in love. You were calculating. You saw a wealthy widower and you positioned yourself, volunteered at the same charities, attended the same events, made yourself indispensable. Then you married him and isolated him from anyone who might question your intentions. I didn't isolate anyone. Robert's children from his first marriage both attended our wedding. His business partners were our friends. His children live in California and London. How convenient. And his friends were people you cultivated, Claudia. People who saw what you wanted them to see. A devoted younger wife instead of a gold digger. I stood, shaking with rage I'd been holding since the moment I saw her in this office. Get out. This is my husband's will reading, and you have no right. I have every right, Denise snapped. I'm your sister, your only family, and I'm not letting you steal what should be shared with the people Robert's wife was actually related to. Martin intervened. Mrs. Bennet, both of you, please sit down. Denise, you filed your contestation. Claudia, you'll need to respond through counsel. This isn't the place for this discussion. When is the place? I demanded. When did you decide to do this, Denise? At the funeral? Before? Were you planning this while Robert was dying? Guilt flickered across her face, confirming what I'd suspected. She'd been planning this for months, waiting for Robert to die so she could challenge the will, claim she deserved half of what he'd left me. I deserve something, Denise said quietly. I'm your sister. I've been there for you. You haven't been there for me since we were children. You've borrowed money you never repaid, called drunk asking for more, showed up at holidays demanding things I wouldn't give. That's not being there for someone. That's using them. And you've used Robert. I loved him. My voice broke. I loved Robert for 17 years, nursed him through cancer, watched him die, and 3 days after his funeral, you're here trying to steal what he left me. What kind of person does that? The kind who won't let her rich sister pretend she's better than everyone else. Denise shot back. Martin stood, clearly done with both of us. Ladies, this meeting is over. Claudia, I'll be in touch about next steps. Denise, your attorneys have the estate documents. We'll be contesting your contestation with every resource available. As Denise and her lawyers left, she paused at the door. You think you've won because you married money, but you're about to learn what it's like to fight for what you've got. And Claudia, I'm not backing down. The door closed behind her. I sat in that conference room for 20 minutes after they left, trying to process what had just happened. My sister, my only living family, was trying to take Robert's legacy, was publicly calling me a gold digger, questioning my marriage, destroying my reputation for money. And something told me this was just the beginning. Martin returned with coffee I didn't want, and sympathy I couldn't accept. I'm sorry, Claudia. I didn't know she was planning this. How strong is her case? He hesitated, which told me everything. She has lawyers, expensive ones. That suggests someone's funding this for her, which means they think they can win. Can they? Not if Robert was truly lucid, not if the will was properly executed, not if we can prove you didn't manipulate or unduly influence him. But Claudia, this will be expensive, prolonged, and very public. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Robert, about our 17 years together, about the life we'd built, about Denise's jealousy that had poisoned every interaction since we were children. Yes, I said, I'm prepared. Robert left me this estate because he wanted me to have it, and I'll fight to honor his wishes, no matter what it costs. What I didn't know then was how much it would cost, or what secrets about Denise I'd discover during the fight, or that Robert had left me one final gift that would change everything. The story hit the Atlanta Journal-Constitution 3 days after the will reading. I was having coffee in my kitchen when my phone started buzzing. Texts from former colleagues, friends from church, people I hadn't spoken to in years. Is this true? I can't believe it. Call me ASAP. I opened the newspaper's website and there it was, front page of the living section. Gold digger or grieving widow. Atlanta heiress faces family challenge over 12 Mellors estate. The article was carefully worded to avoid libel, but the implications were clear. It detailed how I, Claudia Bennet, 62, had married Robert Bennet, 77, 17 years ago. How there was a significant age gap. How Robert's first wife had died and left him wealthy, which I'd allegedly benefited from. How my sister Denise was now courageously challenging the will on behalf of the family Robert left behind. There was a quote from Denise. My sister has always been ambitious. I just want to make sure Robert's wishes were truly his own, not influenced by someone who saw an opportunity in a lonely widower. I threw my phone across the kitchen. It hit the wall, cracked, but I didn't care. This was character assassination, deliberate and public. Denise wasn't just contesting the will in court. She was destroying my reputation in the media. My doorbell rang an hour later. I ignored it. It rang again, persistent. Finally, I opened it to find Sharon Mitchell, my closest friend for 30 years, standing on my porch with a bottle of wine and determination in her eyes. "We need to talk," Sharon said, pushing past me into the house. We sat in my living room, the room where Robert and I had hosted game nights, celebrated birthdays, built a life. Sharon poured wine, even though it was 10 a.m., and handed me a glass. "Tell me the truth," she said. "Did you marry Robert for money?" The question hurt more than it should have. "You know me better than that." "I do, but half of Atlanta doesn't. And Denise is going to every media outlet that will listen, telling them you're a gold digger who manipulated an elderly man. You need to fight back." "How? Take out an ad saying I really loved my husband? That sounds defensive and pathetic." "No, you hire a PR firm. You tell your story properly. You show Atlanta who you and Robert really were." Sharon pulled out her phone. "I know someone. Best crisis management in the South. She owes me a favor." That's how I met Keisha Washington 2 days later. Keisha was 40-ish, sharp-dressed, with eyes that assessed everything and missed nothing. We met at her office in Midtown, all glass and steel and the particular energy of people who solved problems for a living. "I've read the article," Keisha said without preamble. "I've also done research on you, on Robert, and on your sister. Here's the situation. Denise has gotten ahead of the narrative. She's positioned herself as the concerned family member protecting an estate from a manipulative wife. You're playing defense, which means you're losing. So how do I win? You tell the truth, but strategically." Keisha pulled out a folder thick with documents. "I had my team do a deep dive. Your marriage license shows you and Robert dated 3 years before marrying. That's not the behavior of a gold digger. That's a genuine relationship. Robert's children from his first marriage both attended your wedding and maintained contact with you. His business associates speak highly of you. His charitable foundation, which you helped him build, has distributed millions to worthy causes. Denise doesn't care about any of that. No, but the court of public opinion does, and juries, because this will eventually go to trial, care even more. We're going to flood the zone with positive stories, interviews with Robert's children, testimonials from people you've helped through the foundation, photos of you and Robert over 17 years showing genuine affection, not opportunism. Denise will just counter with more lies. Let her. Every lie she tells gives us opportunity to expose her credibility. Which brings me to the next point. We need to dig into Denise's background, find out why she's really doing this. People don't contest wills out of pure principle. There's always a motivating factor, usually financial desperation. I thought about the last time I'd spoken to Denise, 8 months ago, drunk, begging for money. Before that, similar calls, similar desperation. My sister had always been bad with money, but the past few years had been worse. "Hire an investigator," I said. "Find out everything. If she's going to destroy my reputation publicly, I need to know what she's hiding." Keisha smiled. "Already done. My investigator started digging the day I took your case. Should have preliminary results by next week." "That fast?" "Your sister isn't as careful as she thinks she is. Credit reports, court filings, social media. She's left a trail. We're just following it." The next week brought more media hits. An interview with me on Atlanta's morning show, where I showed photos of Robert and me over the years, traveling, volunteering, living a normal married life. Testimonials from Robert's son and daughter, both of whom publicly supported me and called Denise's challenge absurd and insulting. And then, the investigator's report arrived. I read it in my lawyer's office, Martin sitting across from me, Keisha on speakerphone. Each page made my stomach sink further. Denise was broke. Worse than broke. She was $800,000 in debt to people who made collection agencies look merciful. 2 years ago, she'd invested everything she had in a cryptocurrency scheme that turned out to be fraud. Lost her house, her savings, everything. She'd been borrowing from increasingly dangerous sources ever since. "These aren't banks," the investigator's report noted. "These are loan sharks, people who break kneecaps when payments are missed. Your sister owes principal plus interest that's compounding monthly. She's currently 3 months behind on payments." There were also criminal complaints. Denise had written bad checks, defaulted on personal loans, been sued twice by former landlords, and buried in the documentation was something that made my blood run cold. A forged power of attorney from 6 years ago, during a period when I'd given Denise limited authority to handle some paperwork while I was recovering from surgery. She'd used that authority to access one of my accounts, stolen $50,000, covered it up by forging my signature on bank documents. "She robbed you," Martin said flatly. 6 years ago. And you never knew. How did Robert not notice? He helped me manage my finances. It was from your personal account before you merged finances, small enough that it got lost in normal expenses. Martin flipped pages. But Robert did notice. Look at this. A letter, dated 8 months before Robert's death, from Robert to his attorney, marked, to be opened only if Denise Carter contests my will. My hands shook as Martin read it aloud. To whom it may concern, I have recently discovered that my wife's sister, Denise Carter, forged Claudia's signature on bank documents 6 years ago and embezzled $50,000 from Claudia's personal account. I have documented evidence of this fraud. I'm choosing not to tell Claudia at this time because she loves her sister despite Denise's many flaws, and I don't want to destroy that relationship unnecessarily. However, if Denise attempts to challenge my will or claim any portion of my estate, please present this letter and accompanying evidence to demonstrate her character and her history of financial manipulation of my wife. Claudia deserves to inherit everything I leave her, and Denise deserves nothing but the consequences of her own choices. Signed, Robert Bennett. I couldn't speak. Robert had known, had protected me from the truth while he was alive, but left me ammunition for the fight he'd known was coming. This changes everything, Keisha said through the phone. Denise isn't just contesting a will. She's a convicted fraudster. Well, not convicted yet, but she committed fraud against you. We can use this. To destroy her, I said quietly. To win your case, Keisha corrected. Claudia, I know she's your sister, but she's been stealing from you, lying about you, trying to take what your husband left you. At some point, family loyalty becomes enabling abuse. She was right. I knew she was right. But something in me resisted the idea of completely destroying Denise, even after everything she'd done. Let me think about it, I said. Don't think too long, Martin warned. The longer this drags out, the more expensive it gets, and the more damage Denise does to your reputation. We have the evidence to end this. We should use it. I went home to my empty house, to the life Robert and I had built, and tried to decide what kind of person I wanted to be. The kind who fought back with everything she had, or the kind who found another way? The answer came from an unexpected source. Robert himself. I found the letter 2 weeks after learning about Denise's theft. It was tucked inside Robert's copy of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, a book he'd returned to constantly during his illness, finding comfort in Stoic philosophy's acceptance of fate. The envelope was addressed to me in Robert's shaky handwriting from his final week. I'd been going through his study slowly, unable to rush the process of dismantling the space where he'd spent so many hours. My dearest Claudia, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you're probably facing challenges related to my estate. I'm sorry for that. I tried to make everything simple and clear in my will, but I've lived long enough to know that family dynamics are never simple. You're probably angry right now, possibly at me for dying, definitely at whoever's making your life difficult. Knowing your sister as I've come to know her over the years, I suspect Denise is at the center of whatever storm you're navigating. I want to tell you 3 things. First, you deserved every penny I left you. Not because you were my wife, though you were the best wife I could have imagined, but because you earned it. You helped me build the charitable foundation. You advised me on investments. You brought warmth into a house that had been cold since Elizabeth died. You gave me 17 years of happiness I'd never expected to find again. That has value, enormous value. Don't let anyone, especially not Denise, make you feel like you took something you didn't deserve. Second, I know about the theft. The $50,000 Denise stole 6 years ago. I've known for 8 months. I didn't tell you because I saw how much it hurt you when Denise disappointed you, and I didn't want to add to that pain while I was dying, and couldn't be there to support you through it. My lawyer has documentation. Use it however you see fit. Third, and most important, be generous, even to people who don't deserve it, especially to people who don't deserve it. Not because they've earned your generosity, but because generosity is who you are. It's one of the things I loved most about you, your capacity to give even when giving hurt. I'm not saying let Denise walk all over you. I'm saying win the battle, but do it in a way you can live with afterward. Destroy her if you must, but only if you must. If there's another way, a way that protects what's yours while not annihilating your sister, take it. You'll know what's right. You always do. All my love, always and forever, Robert. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face, missing Robert with an intensity that felt physical. He'd known this would happen, had tried to protect me even from beyond death, and he'd given me permission to be generous, not weak, not a pushover, but generous in a way that protected myself while not destroying Denise completely. The question was, how? I called an emergency meeting with Martin, Keisha, and a new addition to my team, Marcus Hendricks, the private investigator Keisha had hired. Marcus was ex-FBI, late 50s, with the particular competence that comes from decades of uncovering truths people desperately wanted hidden. I've continued digging into Denise's situation, Marcus said, spreading files across Martin's conference table. It's worse than we initially thought. The people she owes money to? They're not just loan sharks, they're connected to organized crime. She's missed 4 payments now. These people don't negotiate, they collect, one way or another. So she's desperate, I said. Beyond desperate. She's terrified. I've been monitoring her movements. Legal surveillance, he added quickly. She's looking over her shoulder constantly. Changed her phone number twice. Moved to a new apartment. She knows they're coming for her. Keisha leaned forward. That's why she's fighting so hard for the inheritance. It's not just greed. It's survival. She thinks if she can get half of $12 million, she can pay off the $800,000, disappear, start over. But we can destroy her case, Martin said. Robert's letter, the evidence of theft, her financial desperation showing motive. We present all this to the judge, and Denise's contestation collapses. We win. And then? I asked. What happens to Denise when she loses? Marcus didn't sugarcoat it. Those loan sharks collect. Violently. Your sister could end up seriously hurt or dead. The room fell silent. They were all looking at me, waiting for my decision. Did I want to win so badly that I'd effectively sentence my sister to whatever those criminals would do to her? There's a third option, I said slowly. We don't give her what she wants, but we don't destroy her either. Explain, Keisha said. We present enough evidence to kill her legal case, show the judge she has no standing, that her contestation is frivolous. We win the inheritance battle completely, but separately, quietly, I pay off her debts. Martin looked shocked. You want to give her $800,000 after she tried to steal $12 million? I want to save her life without rewarding her behavior. Pay the loan sharks directly, not through Denise. She never sees the money, never gets to spend it on anything else, just eliminates the threat. Then I establish a trust fund, small monthly payments, maybe $2,000, managed by a third party. Enough for Denise to live modestly, but not enough to waste. She'll hate you, Keisha warned. Taking away her autonomy like that, she already hates me, but she'll be alive to hate me. And there will be conditions. She has to stay sober, attend therapy, not contact me for a specified period. If she violates any conditions, the payments stop. Marcus considered this. It could work, but Claudia, you understand what you're proposing? You're essentially funding your sister's life after she tried to ruin yours. I'm protecting my sister from the consequences of her own desperation while making sure she doesn't get rewarded for it. There's a difference. Why? Martin asked bluntly. After everything she's done, why save her? I held up Robert's letter. Because my husband asked me to be generous even when generosity is hard, and because Denise is still my sister. We shared a childhood, shared parents, shared history. Yes, she's made terrible choices. Yes, she's tried to hurt me. But somewhere under all that desperation and resentment is the little girl who used to hold my hand when she was scared. I can't just let her die because she's made mistakes. Even if those mistakes included trying to steal from you twice, Keisha pressed. Even then. But here's the thing. I'm not letting her win. She doesn't get the inheritance. She doesn't get to live without consequences. She just gets to live. That's the line I'm drawing. The team exchanged glances. They thought I was being soft, letting family sentiment cloud judgment. Maybe they were right. But Robert had known me better than anyone, and he'd trusted my judgment. If we do this, Martin said carefully, we do it smart. Document everything. Make it clear in court filings that while we're defeating her legal challenge, you're separately choosing to provide limited support out of family obligation. That way, if she ever tries to come back for more, we have proof this was generosity, not admission of guilt. Agreed. And the conditions need teeth, Marcus added. Random drug tests, required therapy sessions, financial audits to make sure the trust money isn't being misused. She gets to live, but she doesn't get to live however she wants. That's fair. We spent the next 3 hours hammering out details. How to approach the loan sharks, carefully, with Marcus as intermediary. How to structure the trust, administered by a bank, not me personally. What conditions to impose. Sobriety, therapy, a 2-year no-contact order. By the time I left Martin's office, I had a plan. It wasn't the vindictive victory that part of me wanted, but it was the right thing, and Robert would have approved. Now, I just had to execute it without Denise knowing I was the one saving her life. Because if she knew, she'd never accept help, and then she'd die, and I'd spend the rest of my life wondering if I could have prevented it. The probate court hearing was scheduled for September, 6 months after Denise filed her contestation. Those 6 months felt like years. Endless depositions, document requests, media scrutiny, and watching my sister's lawyers try to dismantle 17 years of my marriage. They subpoenaed our bank records, looking for evidence I'd manipulated Robert financially. Found nothing because there was nothing to find. They interviewed Robert's business associates, his doctors, anyone who might suggest he'd been senile or vulnerable. Everyone testified that Robert had been sharp until weeks before his death. They even tried to make the interracial aspect an issue, suggesting in carefully coded language that I'd targeted Robert specifically because he was white and wealthy. That backfired spectacularly when Robert's children testified that their father had been deeply aware of racial dynamics, had specifically discussed with them how proud he was to be married to me, how our relationship had taught him things his privileged background had shielded him from. My father wasn't a victim, Robert Jr. testified. He was a man who found love late in life and was grateful every day for it. Anyone suggesting Claudia manipulated him didn't know him at all. But Denise's lawyers kept pushing, kept searching for anything that might support their claim that I was a gold digger. They painted me as calculating, mercenary, someone who'd seen an opportunity and taken it. The breaking point came in July, during my deposition. Denise's lead attorney, Charles Morrison, had been questioning me for 3 hours when he pulled out a photograph. "Mrs. Bennett, do you recognize this?" It was a photo from a charity gala, taken 3 weeks before Robert and I started dating. In the photo, I was laughing with Robert at our table, clearly enjoying his company. "Yes, that's from the Children's Hospital fundraiser I attended as a board member of my accounting firm. And you were specifically seated at Robert Bennett's table?" It was assigned seating. The development office arranged it. How convenient. A beautiful younger woman, seated next to a wealthy widower. And 3 weeks later, you started dating. You expect us to believe that was coincidence? My lawyer, Martin, objected immediately. Argumentative and assumes facts not in evidence. But Morrison pressed on. "Mrs. Bennett, isn't it true that you researched Robert Bennett before that gala? Knew his net worth, knew he was widowed, knew he'd be vulnerable to attention from an attractive woman?" "No." My voice was steady despite my fury. "I knew Robert Bennett was a successful businessman and philanthropist. I didn't know his net worth, didn't care about his widow status, and wasn't looking for a relationship at all. I was 45 years old, owned my own successful business, and was perfectly content being single. Yet within 3 weeks of that coincidental seating arrangement, you were dating him." "Yes, because he asked me out. Because we'd had interesting conversations about charitable work and discovered we had compatible values. Because we enjoyed each other's company. That's how relationships start, Mr. Morrison. Through mutual interest and connection. Or through calculated targeting of wealthy older men." Martin stood. "Your Honor, counsel is testifying, not questioning." I moved to strike. Judge Patricia Williams, a black woman in her 60s with a reputation for no-nonsense fairness, sustained the objection. "Mr. Morrison, ask questions or sit down." But the damage was done. The implication hung in the air. I'd targeted Robert deliberately, planned our relationship, manipulated everything for money. During a break, Martin pulled me aside. "This is when we present Robert's letter. Show the judge that Denise stole from you, that she's desperate financially, that her entire case is built on projection. We destroy her credibility and end this." "Not yet," I said. "I want to see how far she'll go first." "Claudia, every day this continues costs you, financially and emotionally. Why prolong it?" "Because I need to be sure about something." "Sure about what?" "Whether Denise is doing this purely out of greed, or whether there's genuine desperation underneath, whether she can be saved, or whether she's too far gone." Martin looked at me like I was insane. Maybe I was. But something Robert had written kept echoing. "Be generous, even to people who don't deserve it." I couldn't be generous if I destroyed Denise before understanding what was really driving her. The answer came 2 days later when Marcus pulled me aside after court. "Claudia, we have a problem. The loan sharks Denise owes money to, they've escalated, sent someone to her apartment, roughed her up. She's got a black eye and broken wrist. Is she okay? Physically, she'll heal. But they gave her a deadline, 1 month to pay, or they collect permanently. They know about the inheritance case. They're waiting to see if she wins. And if she loses?" Marcus's expression said everything. If Denise lost, she didn't just lose money, she lost her life. I went home that night to my empty house and thought about my sister, about the little girl she'd been before resentment poisoned her, about the choices that had led her here, to threatening my inheritance while simultaneously running from people who wanted to kill her, and I made my decision. The next morning, I called an emergency meeting with my team. "We're ending this," I told them. "Today, we present Robert's letter, we show Denise stole from me, We demonstrate her financial motivation. We win decisively. Keisha looked surprised. What changed? She's out of time. The loan sharks gave her a month. If we drag this out longer, she's dead. So we win now, quickly, and then I implement the plan we discussed. Pay off her debts anonymously. Set up the trust. Save her life without rewarding her behavior. You're still going to help her? Martin asked. After everything? I'm going to prevent my sister's murder. There's a difference. That afternoon, we returned to court, and I watched Martin systematically dismantle Denise's case. He presented Robert's letter, detailing the theft from 6 years ago, showed bank records proving Denise had forged my signature, introduced evidence of her debts, her desperation, her motive for contesting the will. Denise's face went pale as each piece of evidence was presented. Her lawyers huddled, whispering urgently. They'd clearly never expected this. Charles Morrison tried to object, to argue that Robert's letter was inadmissible, that the theft was irrelevant to the will contest. Judge Williams shut him down. The letter goes to credibility, she said, and motive. I'm allowing it. Martin then called me to the stand and walked me through the truth, how Robert and I had met, how our relationship had developed, how we'd built a life together based on genuine love and partnership. Mrs. Bennett, he asked, what did you bring to your marriage with Robert Bennett, besides yourself? I brought my business, a successful accounting firm I'd built over 20 years, my own retirement accounts, my own investments, my own home that I sold when we moved in together. I was independently wealthy when I met Robert, not at his level, but comfortable. I didn't need his money. And what did Robert bring to you? Partnership, companionship, love, someone who valued my opinions, who laughed at my jokes, who made me feel seen. That's what he brought. The money was incidental. Morrison cross-examined, tried to poke holes, couldn't find any because I was telling the truth. Finally, frustrated, he played his last card. Mrs. Bennett, you admit your sister is your only living family? Yes. And you'd deny her any part of this inheritance? Leave your only family member with nothing? My sister stole from me 6 years ago. She's now trying to steal from me again by challenging a legal will. She's made terrible financial choices and expects me to fix them. That's not family. That's exploitation. So you'll keep all $12 million for yourself while your sister struggles? The inheritance is mine legally and morally. What I choose to do with it afterward is my business, not yours. Morrison pressed, so you won't help your sister at all? This was the moment. I could tell the truth, that I planned to save Denise's life despite everything, but that would undermine my legal position, make it seem like I thought she deserved something. Or I could lie, win decisively, and help Denise secretly afterward. I chose option 3, careful truth. Mr. Morrison, if my sister was genuinely in need, if she came to me honestly, admitted her mistakes, asked for help as family, I'd consider it. But she didn't do that. She sued me, publicly destroyed my reputation, called me a gold digger, and tried to steal what my husband left me. So no, I won't reward that behavior. But what I might do privately as a family member is different from what I'll allow legally. The inheritance is mine, period. It was the perfect answer, protecting my legal position while leaving room for private generosity. Judge Williams called a recess. Denise's lawyers huddled with her, clearly discussing settlement. 20 minutes later, they approached Martin. We'd like to discuss settlement terms. The settlement negotiations took place in Judge Williams's chambers, less formal than the courtroom, but no less tense. Denise sat across from me for the first time since this began, her face bruised from the loan shark's visit, her right wrist in a cast. She looked broken, defeated, scared. Charles Morrison spoke first. We're prepared to withdraw the will contestation in exchange for a settlement of $2 million, paid immediately to Ms. Carter. Martin laughed. Absolutely not. You have no case. Your client is a demonstrated thief with obvious financial motivation to lie. We're not paying her anything. Then we proceed to trial. Fine by me. We'll win. Your client will be ordered to pay our legal fees, and she'll be bankrupt on top of everything else. Judge Williams intervened. Mr. Morrison, let's be realistic. You've lost this case. The question is whether you lose cleanly now or messily later. What does your client actually need? Morrison glanced at Denise, who'd been silent this whole time. My client believes she deserves a portion of the estate as Mr. Bennett's sister-in-law and Mrs. Bennett's only living family. Your client can believe whatever she wants, Martin said. The law says otherwise. Gentlemen, Judge Williams said firmly, less posturing, more negotiating. I spoke for the first time. I have a proposal. Everyone looked at me. Martin's expression said, "What are you doing?" But he didn't interrupt. Denise withdraws the contestation, admits publicly that her claims were unfounded, and apologizes for the damage done to my reputation. In exchange, I won't pursue charges for the theft from 6 years ago, and I won't seek to recover my legal fees from this case. It was calculated mercy. I'd lose nothing I actually cared about. The theft was too old to prosecute anyway, and I could afford my legal fees, while giving Denise a way out that didn't reward her behavior. Denise finally spoke, her voice hoarse. That's it? You won't give me anything? Not as part of this settlement, no. What the will says stands. Everything goes to me. So I get nothing while you keep $12 million. You get to avoid bankruptcy, criminal charges, and public exposure as a thief. That's not nothing, her lawyers whispered urgently with her. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I could guess. Take the deal. You have no leverage. This is your best option. Finally, Denise looked at me with eyes full of tears and rage and desperation. I hate you, she whispered. I've always hated you. Perfect Claudia, who did everything right, who married rich, who gets everything while I get scraps. I'm sorry you feel that way. No, you're not. You've never cared about me, never helped me when I needed it. I've helped you countless times, lent you money you never repaid, covered your rent, bailed you out of problems you created. But there's a difference between helping and enabling. And somewhere along the way, I stopped being able to tell which was which. So now you're cutting me off completely. I'm setting boundaries. There's a difference. Denise stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly in the small office. Fine, I'll take your deal. I'll admit I was wrong. I'll apologize publicly. But Claudia, don't expect me to ever speak to you again. Don't expect reconciliation or forgiveness or anything. We're done. I can live with that, I said quietly. The settlement was drafted that afternoon. Denise signed it, her lawyers collected their fees, and the case was dismissed with prejudice, meaning it couldn't be refiled. I won. Completely, decisively, definitively. And now came the hard part, saving my sister's life without her knowing I was doing it. Marcus handled the loan shark negotiation. I wasn't present, couldn't be, couldn't risk anyone connecting the payment to me. But Marcus wore a wire, and I listened from my car 2 blocks away while he met with a man called Victor in a parking garage downtown. I'm here on behalf of an anonymous benefactor, Marcus said. His voice came through my earpiece clearly. Someone who's willing to pay Denise Carter's debt in full. Why? Victor's voice was rough, suspicious. Nobody pays $800,000 for nothing. Consider it a family obligation. The benefactor wants the debt settled, wants Ms. Carter left alone, and is willing to pay for that piece. You a cop? Ex-FBI. Now private. Here's the money. I heard rustling, Marcus opening the briefcase with $800,000 in cash. We'd withdrawn it in small increments over 2 weeks, untraceable. And if we want more, if we decide $800,000 isn't enough, then my benefactor becomes extremely uncooperative, and you deal with federal investigations into your organization that make your life considerably more difficult. The offer is $800,000, full settlement, final. Take it or we walk, and you explain to whoever you report to why you turned down clean money. A long pause. Then, deal. But if Denise Carter tries to borrow again, we're not as friendly next time. She won't be borrowing again. Trust me. The transaction completed. Victor left with the money. Marcus left in the opposite direction. And Denise's death sentence was lifted without her ever knowing I was the one who saved her. Phase 2 was the trust fund. I worked with a bank to establish a managed account in Denise's name, funded with $500,000. The trust would pay her $2,000 monthly for the rest of her life, managed by professional trustees who had no connection to me. The conditions were strict. She had to maintain sobriety, verified by random tests, attend therapy, confirmed by therapist reports, and follow all terms of the trust agreement. If she violated any conditions, payments stopped immediately. She'd also signed a no-contact agreement as part of the settlement. She couldn't contact me for 2 years. By the time that period ended, hopefully she'd be stable enough that we could have a conversation without legal warfare. I had no illusions about reconciliation. Denise hated me, but at least she'd be alive to hate me. The notification came 3 weeks after the settlement, a letter from the law firm managing the trust, sent to Denise at the address we had on file. Dear Ms. Carter, an anonymous donor has established a trust fund in your name. The trust will pay $2,000 monthly for life, contingent upon your compliance with certain conditions. I never saw Denise's reaction to the letter. But Marcus, who maintained surveillance for 1 more week to ensure the loan sharks didn't double-cross us, reported that she sat in her apartment reading it for 20 minutes, crying. Think she knows it's you? Marcus asked. Maybe, probably, but she can't prove it. And the money doesn't come from me directly. As far as anyone can demonstrate, it's an anonymous donor who felt sorry for her situation. That's a lot of money to give someone who tried to destroy you. It's a lot of money to save someone's life. And Marcus, it's not like I can't afford it. Robert left me $12 million. Spending $1.3 million to keep my sister alive and stable seems like a reasonable allocation. Most people would have just let her face the consequences. Most people don't have Robert's voice in their head, reminding them to be generous even when generosity is hard. 6 months after the settlement, I received an email. No name, sent from a generic free email account, untraceable. I know it was you. I know you paid off my debts. I know you set up the trust. I should thank you. I won't, because accepting help from you means admitting I needed rescuing, and I'm not ready to admit that. Maybe I'll never be ready. But Claudia, whether I thank you or not, I'm alive because of you. And I'm sober for the first time in 5 years. And I'm in therapy working through 30 years of resentment and bad choices. That's not nothing. So I won't thank you, but I won't hate you either. Not anymore. Maybe someday we'll talk. Maybe not. But if we do, I'll be a better person than the one who sued you. That's all I can promise. D. I read the email 3 times, then saved it in a folder marked Hope. Winning the inheritance meant I now had to decide what to do with it. $12 million was more than I needed to live comfortably for the rest of my life, more than I could spend even if I tried. Robert had left me wealth, but more importantly, he'd left me responsibility to use that wealth in ways that honored his memory and our shared values. The foundation was the obvious starting point. Robert had established the Bennett Family Foundation before we met, focused on education and healthcare. After we married, I'd helped him expand its mission to include financial literacy and business development for underserved communities. Now, with full control and significant additional funding, I could make the foundation what we'd always envisioned, a transformative force in Atlanta's Black business community. I hired Keisha Washington away from her PR firm to serve as executive director. She was brilliant, strategic, and understood both the business side and the social impact side of philanthropy. Here's what I'm thinking, I told her during our first strategy meeting. 3 pillars: education, entrepreneurship, and emergency support. We fund business training programs, provide microloans to women-owned businesses, and create safety net services for people facing financial crisis. Like your sister was facing, Keisha said quietly. Yes, like Denise was facing. If there'd been better support systems, maybe she wouldn't have turned to loan sharks. Maybe she wouldn't have felt like her only option was suing me. You want to build the system that would have saved her before she needed saving. Exactly. We launched the expanded foundation with a gala in November, 1 year after Robert's death, 10 months after Denise's failed lawsuit. 600 people attended, including Robert's children, my former business colleagues, and community leaders from across Atlanta. Robert Jr. gave the opening speech. My father believed that wealth was a tool, not a trophy. He believed that those who had much should give much, and he believed that the true measure of a life wasn't what you accumulated, but what you gave away. Claudia understood that better than anyone. She helped my father live those values, and now she's building on his legacy in ways that will impact thousands of lives. The foundation's first-year budget was $2 million. We funded 12 small businesses owned by Black women, provided financial counseling to 150 families, offered emergency grants to 30 people facing eviction or utility shutoffs. One of those emergency grants went to a woman named Cheryl, who'd lost her job during the pandemic and was 3 months behind on rent. She was facing eviction, was about to be homeless with 2 children. The $4,000 grant from our foundation kept her housed long enough to find new employment. 6 months later, she sent me a letter. Mrs. Bennett, I don't know if you remember me. I'm one of the people your foundation helped when I was about to lose my apartment. That $4,000 felt like a miracle, like someone actually saw me as a human being instead of just another statistic. I wanted you to know I got a new job, I'm caught up on rent, and I've started saving. But more than that, I've started believing things can get better. Thank you for not giving up on people like me. I framed that letter and put it in my office, a reminder of what money could do when used to help instead of hoard. 2 years after the settlement, I was at the foundation's 2nd annual gala when I saw her. Denise stood near the back of the ballroom, wearing a simple dress that actually fit properly, her hair styled professionally, her face free of the bruises and exhaustion that had marked our last courtroom encounter. She looked healthy, sober, put together in a way I hadn't seen in decades. Our eyes met across the room. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she nodded slightly, not friendly, not warm, but acknowledging. I nodded back. The no-contact period had ended 3 months ago, but neither of us had reached out. I'd assumed we never would, that whatever relationship we'd once had was permanently destroyed by inheritance battles and betrayal and choices neither of us could take back. But here she was, at my foundation's event, looking like she wanted to say something. I excused myself from the donor conversation I'd been having and made my way across the ballroom. Denise met me halfway, in a quiet corner away from the crowd. "Hi," she said awkwardly. "Hi. I wasn't sure if I should come, but I've been following the foundation's work. It's impressive. What you're doing for women in financial crisis, the small business loans, all of it. It's good work. Thank you. And I know," she paused, swallowed hard. "I know I'm one of the reasons you're doing it. The emergency fund, the debt counseling, the anti-predatory lending education. You built this because of what happened to me. I built it because there are thousands of people facing what you faced. You were just the most personal example. Was it you?" she asked quietly. "The anonymous donor who paid off my debts? The trust fund?" I'd prepared for this question for 2 years, had several answers ready. Denials, deflections, plausible alternatives. But looking at my sister's face, at the person she'd worked hard to become over 24 months of sobriety and therapy, I chose truth. "Yes." Denise's eyes filled with tears. "Why? After everything I did to you, why would you save me? Because you're my sister, and because letting you die wasn't an option I could live with. Even though I tried to steal from you, publicly destroyed your reputation, made your life hell for 6 months. Even though, Denise, what you did was terrible, unforgivable in a lot of ways, but you're still my sister, still the little girl who used to be afraid of thunderstorms and would sneak into my room for comfort. Somewhere under all the resentment and bad choices, that person still existed. I had to believe she was worth saving." Denise wiped her eyes, mascara smudging slightly. "I've been in therapy for 2 years, working through why I resented you so much, why I made the choices I made. And Claudia, the truth is, I was jealous, always, of your success, your stability, your marriage to Robert. I felt like you got everything while I struggled with everything, and that jealousy poisoned me. I know, but here's what I'm learning. My jealousy wasn't your fault. You didn't do anything wrong by succeeding, by building a business, by finding love, by being smart with money. Those were good things. My inability to be happy for you was my problem, not yours. That must have been hard to realize. It was, still is, because admitting that means admitting I wasted years hating you for no good reason. Admitting that I destroyed our relationship over resentment that was never justified. I thought about Robert's letter, about his advice to be generous even when generosity was hard. We both made mistakes, Denise. I could have been more supportive when you were struggling, could have helped you get therapy earlier, could have intervened when your financial decisions were clearly destructive. I saw you spiraling, and I stepped back instead of stepping in, because I pushed you away every time you tried to help. Yes, but I could have tried harder, could have set better boundaries while still showing up for you. I let our relationship deteriorate because it was easier than fighting through your resentment. We stood in silence for a moment, 2 sisters who'd spent decades hurting each other, finally being honest about it. "The trust fund conditions," Denise said. "The sobriety requirements, the therapy, the financial oversight, they're annoying as hell. Invasive, I know, but they saved my life. Having structure, having someone checking on me, having consequences if I screwed up, that's what I needed. What I'd needed for years, but never accepted. Are you staying sober? 2 years, 3 months, 14 days. I go to meetings every week, have a sponsor, work the steps. It's hard, but it's working. I'm proud of you." Denise looked surprised. "You are?" "Yes. Getting sober is incredibly difficult. Staying sober is harder. You're doing something that most people can't manage. That takes strength. I'm doing it because I don't want to die. And because I want to be someone my sister doesn't have to be ashamed of." My throat tightened. "I was never ashamed of you, Denise. Disappointed sometimes, frustrated often, but not ashamed. Even when I sued you, called you a gold digger publicly? Even then, you were desperate and scared and making terrible choices, but you were still my sister." The gala continued around us, donors mingling, servers circulating with appetizers, music playing softly. But in our corner, something shifted. Not reconciliation exactly, not forgiveness completely, but something like understanding, like the possibility of eventually rebuilding what had been broken. "Can we try?" Denise asked. "Not to go back to how things were. We can't do that. But to build something new, something healthier, I'd like that. But Denise, it has to be real. No lies, no manipulation, no falling back into old patterns. If you need help, you ask directly. If I need boundaries, I state them clearly. Can you do that?" "I can try. That's all I can promise. That I'll try." That's enough. We didn't hug, weren't ready for that level of physical intimacy. But we stood together for a few more minutes, talking about her therapy, her job, administrative work at a nonprofit, her apartment, her life that was finally becoming stable. When she left, she paused at the door and looked back. "Claudia, thank you for saving me even when I didn't deserve it, for being the kind of person who chooses mercy over vengeance. Robert was right about you. You're extraordinary." She left before I could respond. I returned to the gala, to donors and speeches, and the work of building something meaningful from wealth I'd inherited. And I thought about Robert, about how he'd known this moment might come, how he'd trusted me to navigate it with grace instead of rage. I'd won the inheritance, but more importantly, I'd kept my sister alive and created space for possible reconciliation. That felt like a victory worth celebrating. The foundation's 3rd anniversary brought surprising growth. We'd expanded to 3 Georgia cities, helped over 200 small businesses launch, provided emergency support to more than 500 families facing financial crisis. The memoir I'd written, Inheritance, Family, Money, and the Choice to Be Generous, had become a moderate bestseller, not because people cared about my personal story, but because it spoke to something universal: how we navigate family relationships when money becomes the central conflict. I donated all royalties to the foundation, didn't need the money, and it felt right to turn personal pain into public good. Denise and I met for coffee once a month now, carefully, tentatively, building something that resembled sisterhood. We didn't talk about the lawsuit anymore. That was history, processed through therapy and time. Instead, we talked about her work, my foundation, family memories from childhood, the future we might both have. "I got a promotion," she told me during one coffee date. "Assistant director at the nonprofit. More responsibility, better pay." "Denise, that's wonderful. Are you ready for it?" "I think so. My boss says I'm good with people, good at problem solving." Turns out all those years of figuring out how to survive bad situations gave me useful skills. Survival skills are underrated. Mom would have been proud of both of us, of what we've become despite everything. Our mother had died 10 years ago, our father 5 years before that. They'd never seen the inheritance battle, never known how close Denise and I had come to permanent estrangement. Maybe that was mercy. "Mom always said we were too alike to get along," I said. "Both stubborn, both determined to prove ourselves, both terrible at asking for help." She was right. We spent 30 years competing instead of supporting each other. Are we supporting each other now? Denise considered this. "We're learning how. That's progress." Robert's children, Robert Jr. and Elizabeth, had become regular fixtures in my life, treating me not as their father's widow, but as family. They brought their own children to foundation events, taught their kids about philanthropy and generosity and using wealth for good. "Dad would love this," Robert Jr. told me at one event, watching his teenage daughter volunteer at our small business workshop. "He always said money was a tool, not a trophy. You've made that real." "I'm just following his example." "No, you're exceeding it. Dad was generous, but you're strategic. You're building systems that prevent people from needing charity in the first place. That's next level." I thought about Denise, about how the foundation's emergency fund had helped dozens of people avoid the desperation that had driven her to sue me, how the financial literacy programs taught people to recognize predatory lenders before getting trapped, how the small business loans created sustainable income instead of dependency. Robert had given me money. I'd turned it into transformation. The foundation also started a speakers program, people who'd been helped telling their stories publicly, humanizing financial crisis in ways statistics couldn't. Denise volunteered to be one of those speakers. "Are you sure?" I asked when she proposed it. "It means talking about the loan sharks, the debt, the desperation. That's vulnerable. It's also true. And if sharing my story helps one person avoid making my mistakes, it's worth it." I watched from the audience as Denise stood on stage at a community event and told her story. Not the lawsuit version. She didn't mention me or the inheritance battle, just the part about falling into debt, making terrible choices, losing everything, and finding a way back through structured support and sobriety. "I thought I'd die in debt," she said. "Thought the people I owed money to would eventually collect permanently. But someone believed I was worth saving, even when I didn't believe it myself. They gave me structure, accountability, and a chance to rebuild. 3 years later, I'm sober, employed, stable, and genuinely happy for the first time in decades. That's what good support systems do. They don't just solve immediate crises, they create foundations for long-term change." The audience applauded. Several people came up afterward to ask for resources, to share their own struggles, to thank Denise for her honesty. Afterward, over dinner, I told her that was brave and powerful. It was terrifying, but also necessary. I spent so many years lying to myself, to you, to everyone, Telling the truth feels like the least I can do. Have you thought about what comes next, after the trust fund conditions end? The trust had been structured with a 5-year oversight period. After that, if Denise maintained sobriety and stability, she'd get control over the remaining funds, about $200,000 at that point. I want to stay in nonprofit work, she said. Maybe go back to school, get a degree in social work or counseling, use what I learned from hitting bottom to help other people climb back up. That's a good plan. It's your plan, really. You showed me how trauma and mistakes can become purpose. I'm just following your example. We're both following Robert's example. He taught me that wealth without purpose is just hoarding, that the point of having resources is using them to make things better. Do you still miss him? Every day. But I also hear his voice in my head, especially when I'm making hard decisions. He keeps me honest, keeps me generous, keeps me focused on what matters. I think he'd be happy with what you've built. I hope so. 5 years after Robert's death, I stood in the foundation's new headquarters, a beautiful building in downtown Atlanta that we'd purchased and renovated specifically for our expanding programs. The building had history. It used to be a Black-owned bank that closed during the 2008 financial crisis. We'd restored it with period-appropriate details while adding modern amenities. It felt right, taking something that had served the community once and making it serve the community again. The dedication ceremony drew hundreds of people, foundation beneficiaries, donors, community leaders, and family. Robert Jr. and Elizabeth came with their families. Marcus and Keisha, who'd become dear friends through this work. Sharon, my best friend, who'd stood by me through the inheritance battle and everything after. And Denise, sober 5 years now, working as a peer counselor at a substance abuse treatment center, looking more at peace than I'd ever seen her. I have a confession, Denise told me before the ceremony began. We were in what used to be the bank president's office, now my office, looking out at the crowd gathering below. What's that? I used to imagine what I'd do if I won the lawsuit, all the ways I'd spend your money, the house I'd buy, the car I'd drive, the revenge spending I'd do just to spite you for being so successful while I struggled. And now? Now I realize that if I'd won, if I'd gotten $6 million, I'd probably be dead. I'd have paid off the loan sharks, sure, but then I'd have kept spending, kept drinking, kept making terrible choices until the money was gone and I was worse off than before. The lawsuit failing was the best thing that could have happened to me. That's a hard truth to accept, but it's true. You saving me without giving me what I wanted, that's what I actually needed. Structure, accountability, consequences, and just enough support to stabilize. If you just handed me money, you'd have been enabling my dysfunction. Instead, you gave me a path to actual healing. I'm glad it worked. Me too. And Claudia, I need to say this. I'm sorry for the lawsuit, for the lies, for trying to destroy you publicly, for all of it. I was desperate and scared, but that doesn't excuse what I did. You deserved better from your sister. Apology accepted. And I'm sorry too, for the years I pulled away instead of engaging, for not intervening sooner when you were spiraling, for letting our relationship deteriorate because it was easier than fighting through the hard stuff. We both made mistakes, yes, but we're both still here, still working on being better. That counts for something. The ceremony began. I gave a speech about Robert, about his generosity and vision, about how this foundation honored his memory by turning wealth into opportunity. Keisha presented statistics about our impact. 315 small businesses funded, 892 families helped with emergency support, $4.2 million in predatory loans prevented through financial education. Then we unveiled the plaque in the building's lobby, the Robert Bennett Center for Economic Justice, dedicated to the belief that wealth is a tool for transformation and that every person deserves the support and resources necessary to build a stable, dignified life. After the ceremony, as people mingled and toured the building, I found myself alone in my office. Through the window, I could see Atlanta's skyline, the city where I'd built a business, found love, lost my husband, fought my sister, and created something that would outlast all of us. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number, though I recognized the timing. Same day every month for the past 3 years. Thank you for choosing mercy. Today I celebrate 5 years sober, 3 years at a job I love, and the possibility of becoming someone my family can be proud of. You gave me that chance when you had every right to destroy me instead. I won't waste it. Denise had never sent these texts from her regular number. Some need for privacy, for this gratitude to be separate from our rebuilding relationship. I never responded, just saved each one in a folder marked Grace. Someone knocked on my office door. Sharon, carrying 2 glasses of champagne from the celebration downstairs. Hiding? She asked, reflecting. On what? On how 5 years ago I thought my life was ending. Robert had just died. My sister was trying to steal my inheritance. My reputation was being destroyed publicly. I couldn't see how any of it would turn out okay. And now? Now I'm running a foundation that changes lives. I've rebuilt a relationship with my sister that I thought was permanently broken. I've turned Robert's legacy into something that would make him proud. It turned out better than okay. It turned out meaningful. Robert knew it would. That's why he left you that letter. He trusted you to navigate the hard parts with grace instead of rage. I almost didn't. There were moments when I wanted to destroy Denise completely, expose everything, make her pay for every lie and betrayal. But you didn't. No, because Robert asked me to be generous, even when generosity was hard, and because I realized that destroying Denise wouldn't actually make me feel better. It would just create more damage, more pain, more brokenness, and the world has enough of that. Through the window, I watched Denise talking with a group of people downstairs, sharing her story probably, connecting with others who understood addiction and recovery and the long road back from rock bottom. Do you think you'll ever fully forgive her? Sharon asked. I think I already have, not because she's earned it, though she's worked hard at rebuilding trust, but because carrying unforgiveness was hurting me more than it was hurting her. Robert taught me that too, that generosity isn't just about money, it's about grace, about choosing to release resentment, even when resentment is justified. That's very evolved of you. It's very tired of me, I corrected, laughing. I'm 67 years old, Sharon. I don't have time for grudges anymore. I'd rather spend my remaining years building things than nursing old wounds. To building things, Sharon said, raising her glass. To building things, I echoed. We toasted and drank, looking out at the city and the foundation and the life I'd built from inheritance I'd had to fight for. Denise had wanted my money. Instead, I'd given her something more valuable, a second chance at life, at sobriety, at becoming someone she could respect. And in doing so, I'd discovered what Robert had known all along, that the true measure of wealth wasn't what you kept, but what you gave away and what you built with what remained. The inheritance battle was over. The inheritance itself, $12 million that had caused so much pain, had been transformed into something Robert would have loved, a foundation that served hundreds, a reconciliation between sisters, a model for how generosity could be both strategic and heartfelt. I finished my champagne and went back downstairs to the celebration, to the people whose lives had been changed by choosing grace over vengeance, to the sister who'd tried to destroy me and whom I'd saved anyway, to the legacy Robert had left that was now bigger than either of us. Some inheritances are money. The best inheritances are lessons about what money is actually for, and I'd learned mine well.